I was 11 when my stepmother locked me in a basement and declared me dead to steal $50 million meant for my sister and me. 14 years later, I escaped and started digging up everything she'd buried with me. I still remember the smell of pine wood and fresh paint that morning. The last morning before everything in my life went dark. My father was in the garage tuning up the old Harley, humming some half-forgotten Eagles song. My stepmother, Victoria, was in the kitchen making coffee in that French press. She said only rich people deserved. I was 11, and I believed everything she said. She smiled at me that day. Not the real kind of smile that warms you, but the one that makes you feel like you've done something wrong without knowing what. She told me my sister Lily was already at school and that I should eat quick, that the doctor would come by later for my evaluation. Evaluation was her word for therapy, but I knew better than to ask. Asking questions made her jaw tighten. I sat at the kitchen island spooning cereal that tasted like chalk, pretending not to notice the envelope on the counter with my name on it. It had the seal from our family trust. My mom, Eleanor, had created that trust before she died. I didn't really understand money, but I knew it was meant for me and Lily when we grew up. Victoria said she was managing it now. She said she had to, because kids couldn't handle that kind of responsibility. Dad called from the garage, asking if I wanted to go for a ride. Victoria answered before I could. Not today. Jonathan. He's got that doctor coming. Remember, he frowned but didn't argue. That was the thing about Dad. He was smart enough to build 2 companies. But somehow, he always gave up when Victoria spoke. That afternoon was the last time I saw him alive. They said later it was a gas leak. The official report called it an accident. I never smelled any gas. I only remembered Victoria sending me to bed early that night, saying the repair guys would come in the morning. I woke up to smoke, to shouting, to sirens. I woke up to her hands dragging me outside while the house behind us burned. She held me tight while neighbors stared and firefighters ran past. I cried for my dad, but she just whispered, "It's going to be okay. Aaron. Mommy's got you now. Mommy." She started calling herself that the day after the funeral. The next weeks blurred into hospital visits. Reporters, lawyers, everyone seemed to believe her version of the story. That my dad's death was a tragedy. That I was lucky she'd taken me in. Lily went to stay with relatives in New York. I begged her not to go, but Victoria said it was best. She said I needed rest. That my mind wasn't right since the fire. At first, I thought maybe she cared. She gave me new clothes, kept me out of school, said she'd hire tutors. But then the locks appeared. The first was on my bedroom door. She said it was for my safety because I sleepwalked. A week later she put bars on the window. Said it was to keep burglars out. The last one was the bolt at the top of the basement stairs. That one didn't come with an explanation. I didn't even realize she was locking me down there until the 3rd night. She told me it was a new therapy method. Isolation helps you heal. She said, "You're dangerous to yourself. Aaron, you tried to hurt Lily once. Don't you remember I didn't?" But she said it so often, so calmly, that I started to wonder if maybe she was right. The basement smelled like concrete dust and bleach. There was an old couch, a single bulb hanging from a chain, and a bucket she said was a temporary toilet. Meals came twice a day. Sandwiches, canned beans, sometimes nothing. I counted the cracks in the wall until I lost track of time. Every few weeks she'd bring down papers, saying they were doctor reports. They all said I was unstable, prone to violent outbursts. The doctor's signature looked the same each time. She said his name was Dr. Brenner. I never saw him. I asked once about Lily. Victoria said Lily was afraid of me, that she didn't want to see me until I got better. Something in me broke that day. I stopped asking questions. I stopped marking the days on the wall because they only reminded me I was still there. Sometimes I'd hear music upstairs. Parties. Laughter. I'd press my ear to the vent and listen to her laugh. That high, sharp sound like glass breaking. Once, I heard her talking to someone. A man's voice I didn't know. He asked about me. She said, "Don't worry. He's gone. The doctors handled it. Nobody looks for dead kids." I froze. Dead kids. She was talking about me. Later, I saw her bring down boxes of old photos. She took every picture that had me in it and ripped it in half. She burned them in a metal bin right there in the basement while I watched from the corner. The smell of melted plastic frames clung to my clothes for days. When I asked why, she smiled that same thin smile. Because you died. Aaron. You died in that fire with your father. I'm just keeping what's left of you safe. I tried to fight her once. She was stronger. The next day I woke up bruised. My head throbbing. A new lock added to the basement door. For years I thought maybe she was right. That I was too dangerous to be around people. That maybe I really did die that night and the basement was where bad kids went afterward. But everything changed the day I found the envelope. It was tucked behind the furnace. Half burned from the heat. My name. Written in my mother's handwriting. Inside were two things: a family photo and a letter. The photo was from before Victoria. My mom. My dad. Me and Lily at the lake. All smiles and sunburned faces. The letter said only 5 words: trust no one but her. Her. I didn't know who she meant. At the bottom, there was a smudge of blue ink where the rest of the sentence had burned away. That night I waited until Victoria brought dinner. I asked her why Mom would leave a letter like that. The tray slipped from her hands. For a moment she looked almost afraid. Then the mask came back on. Where did you get that? She asked. I didn't answer. She stared at me for a long time. Then smiled again. You really shouldn't go digging where you don't belong. The next morning she boarded up the furnace room. I started keeping notes after that. Tiny scraps of paper hidden inside the lining of the couch. Every word she said. Every visit. Every lie. I didn't know why. Maybe part of me still believed someone would find them someday. I didn't know that someone would be me. Because 6 years later, I found a way out. But that's not where the story ends. That's where it really begins. The first time I realized I could escape was by accident. It was raining hard that night. The kind of Colorado rain that feels like punishment. The basement flooded near the drain by the furnace. And Victoria didn't notice. I used an old tin plate to scoop the water toward the wall and saw something I had never noticed before: a loose cinder block near the baseboard. Soft from years of moisture. For a week, I chipped at it quietly, using the edge of a spoon she'd forgotten on a food tray. Every night I worked a little more, stopping whenever I heard footsteps. I told myself I wasn't escaping, just making space to breathe. But the truth was, I was done breathing the same recycled air she allowed me. Victoria had grown lazy over the years. Maybe she thought I was too broken to try again. She'd stopped locking the second bolt when she came down, trusting that I wouldn't resist. She'd grown older, softer, richer. I could tell from her perfume that she was going out more. Probably fundraising or pretending to run that charity, she said, honored my mother. I had no idea she was funneling money through it. I didn't even know there was still money left. All I knew was the sound of her heels on the wooden floor above me. That click, pause, click pattern became the heartbeat of my world. One morning she came down with a newspaper. Something she'd never done before. She placed it on the small table next to the cold plate of beans. You've been quiet lately, she said. Her voice was syrupy, but I could hear the tension under it. That's good. The doctors think you're improving. I stared at the headline: More Foundation expands outreach programs. My mother's name was still on it. My name wasn't. She saw me looking. You should be proud. Your mother's legacy is helping people. My mother's legacy, I repeated, my voice rough from disuse. Not yours. Her smile froze. Don't start that again. Aaron, you know what happens when you get upset. She left the paper. Maybe as a warning. Maybe as a mistake. I tore out the article and folded it into my pocket. That was the day I started to plan for real. The loose cinder block led to a narrow gap behind the wall. A space maybe 2 feet deep, filled with old insulation and spider webs. On the far side was the support beam for the staircase. I pushed my fingers along it and felt the wood crumble slightly. If I could weaken it enough, I might be able to pry the door frame loose. It took months. I used bits of metal, screws from the vent cover, even shards of broken glass. I worked in silence, counting each scrape as a prayer. Then one night, I heard a voice that wasn't hers. A man. Deep. Smooth. Familiar somehow. You sure it's safe to keep him here completely? She said. The paperwork says he's been dead for 10 years. Even his sister believes it. My heart stopped. Lily. I hadn't heard that name in years. I pressed my ear to the vent. Shaking. I'm transferring the last funds next month. Victoria continued. After that, it's over. I'm tired of hiding. What about the house? She laughed softly. Let it burn again if it has to. Their footsteps faded, replaced by the low hum of the heater. I sat in the dark, my hands trembling, the old fear rising in waves. But beneath it, something new took shape. Anger. The next day, I stopped pretending to eat the food she gave me. I needed my head clear, my body light. I worked faster on the beam, ignoring the pain in my hands. When I pulled one nail loose and saw the glint of daylight through a crack, I almost cried. On the third night, she came down later than usual. I could smell wine on her breath. She was humming something from the radio upstairs. I hid my bleeding hands behind my back. Big day tomorrow, she said cheerfully. You'll finally be free. Her tone didn't match the words. She dropped the tray on the floor, the clang echoing off the concrete. A new facility in Mexico. Peaceful. Private. They'll take good care of you there. My stomach turned cold. Mexico doctors overseas are more understanding, she said. Less paperwork. She left laughing, locking the door behind her. I waited until the sound of her heels disappeared, then lunged at the wall. The beam cracked, a sharp splinter slicing my palm. I didn't stop. I pulled, twisted, kicked, until the wood gave way with a groan. The upper hinge of the basement door popped loose. I froze, listening. No movement above. I pushed harder. The frame shifted just enough to slip my fingers through the gap. The wood tore, the sound of it mixing with my own ragged breathing. Then, silence. For the first time in 14 years, the air smelled different. Dust. But also freedom. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step creaking like it remembered me. At the top, the door hung crooked on one hinge. I pushed it open and stepped into the hallway. Everything had changed. The walls were painted white, the old pictures gone. Where my father's study used to be, there was now an office with modern furniture and framed certificates from charity galas. I moved carefully, barefoot on the hardwood, my heart pounding in my ears. On a desk sat a folder labeled More Foundation Annual Report. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside were spreadsheets, bank transfers, and a page titled Disbursements Cayman Holdings. I didn't understand all of it, but I saw one thing clearly: her signature. Victoria Hale, trustee and beneficiary. Then I heard the sound of glass clinking. She was still awake. I ducked behind the door frame just as she entered the room, talking on the phone. Yes. The paperwork's ready, she said. Once he's gone, the rest of the funds transfer automatically. She stopped mid-sentence. The door to the basement was open. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I'll call you back. She stepped toward the stairs. Her hand reached for the light switch. I didn't wait to see her face. I ran. Through the kitchen, past the back door, into the cold rain that soaked my thin shirt instantly. My bare feet hit gravel and mud, the air burning in my lungs. I didn't look back until I reached the end of the driveway. The house glowed behind me like something alive, waiting for me to turn around. I never did. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. I kept walking toward the sound, toward the road, toward whatever came next. I didn't know then that freedom was just another kind of prison, one that would demand I relive every second of that night for years to come. But for the moment, I was alive, and that was enough. By the time the sky began to lighten, I was 5 miles from the house. My feet were raw, my throat dry, and every sound made me flinch. I followed the county road until I saw the glowing sign of a gas station. The man inside looked half asleep, scrolling on his phone. He barely glanced at me when I walked in, dripping wet, clothes clinging to my skin. I grabbed a bottle of water and a bag of pretzels from a shelf and put them on the counter. You okay there, buddy? He asked, squinting. Yeah, I said, my voice cracking. Just long night. He shrugged, rang it up, and said, 375. I counted crumpled bills from the $60 I'd found in Victoria's drawer. He didn't ask where I got them. Nobody ever asks the right questions in the middle of nowhere. Outside, I sat behind the dumpster and ate slowly, watching the sunrise. The first real sunrise I'd seen in more than a decade. I expected to feel something big, something cinematic. Instead, I just felt empty. Like the world had moved on without me, and I was some ghost trying to catch up. When I finished the pretzels, I noticed a bulletin board by the door. Old flyers for lost dogs, truck rentals, and local jobs. One caught my eye: help wanted, maintenance, Ridgeway Office Park, apply in person. I didn't know what that was, but it was in town. I needed to disappear somewhere people wouldn't ask too many questions. I threw the empty bottle away and started walking again. By noon, I reached the edge of Denver. Cars sped past on the highway. People going to work, sipping coffee, arguing on their phones. I wanted to shout at them, tell them I was still here, that I existed. But I kept my head down. A homeless man near the underpass waved at me. Hey, you new around here? Guess so. He nodded toward my feet. You're bleeding. Man, you want some tape or something? I looked down. My toes were split, covered in dirt and blood. I'll be fine. He handed me a half-empty bottle of rubbing alcohol. No one's fine out here. Trust me. His words stuck with me as I made my way to Ridgeway Office Park. A group of beige buildings lined with trimmed hedges and flags flapping in the wind. I walked through the glass doors and stood at the front desk, trying not to look like someone who'd just crawled out of a grave. The receptionist looked me up and down. Can I help you? I'm here about the maintenance job, I said. She frowned. You got a resume? No. But I work hard. I don't need training. She hesitated, then handed me a short form. Fill that out. Mr. Torres handles the hires. He's in the back. I didn't know it then, but that job would be the bridge between the life I ran from and the truth waiting to find me. Mr. Torres was a short man with nicotine-stained fingers and a voice like sandpaper. He looked at my form for less than 5 seconds. You got ID? No, I said quickly. Wallet got stolen. I can get another one soon. He stared at me, then sighed. Cash pay. Minimum wage. You clean the offices at night. Don't bother the tenants. And if I catch you sleeping on the job, you're out. I nodded. Deal. He tossed me a set of keys and pointed to a supply closet. Uniforms in there. Medium only. If it doesn't fit, tough luck. That first night, I mopped floors and scrubbed bathrooms until my arms went numb. I didn't talk to anyone. Didn't look at anyone. The building was quiet after dark. The hum of the air vents oddly comforting. Every creak made me tense. But no one came down those halls except me. I found an empty storage room on the top floor where I could sleep a few hours before dawn. There was an outlet for my phone charger, though I didn't have a phone. Just the hum of the city outside the window. Sometimes, when I closed my eyes, I still saw her standing at the top of the basement stairs, holding a tray of food. That smile frozen in place. I'd wake up gasping, half expecting to hear the lock click shut again. Weeks passed. My hands toughened. My mind cleared. I stopped jumping at every sound. The security guards started nodding to me in the hallways. Small gestures that made me feel almost normal. Then one night, around 2 a.m., I was cleaning the 20th floor. Most offices were empty. Lights off except for one at the end of the hall. A man sat behind a glass door. Papers spread across the table, his white hair glowing under the lamp. I started to back away, but he looked up. It's fine. Come in. I'm done here. I pushed my cart in quietly. The man smiled tiredly. Long night. Huh. Always. I said. He stood, stretching. Name's Harrison Reed. My mop froze midair. That name. I'd seen it printed on my mother's trust paperwork years ago. He noticed my expression. You all right? Son, I nodded too quickly. Yeah. Just tired. He picked up his coat and started toward the door. Then he stopped, staring at me with a frown that deepened the longer he looked. You look familiar, he said slowly. What's your name? My throat tightened. I wanted to lie. To pick something forgettable. But the truth slipped out before I could stop it. Aaron. Aaron Blake. The color drained from his face. His briefcase slipped from his hand. Papers scattering across the floor. That's impossible, he whispered. Aaron Blake died 15 years ago. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The air felt too thick. Not dead, I said quietly. Just buried. He stared at me as if seeing a ghost. Then he grabbed the phone on the table. Don't move, he said, his voice trembling. Please, don't move. I didn't. I just stood there, my heart pounding. As he called someone and said words, I barely heard police. Trust. Alive. Proof. When he hung up, his eyes were wet. Your mother was my friend, he said. She made me promise to protect you and your sister. I failed both of you. I didn't know what to say. The only thing I could manage was, Is Lily alive? He nodded slowly. She's alive. She thinks you died with your father. For the first time in years, I felt something close to hope. But hope can be dangerous. Because for every truth it uncovers, it stirs a dozen lies back to life. And Victoria Hale's lies were about to start unraveling. The cops didn't believe it at first. When Harrison called them that night, they thought he was drunk or confused. Reporting a ghost. A missing person returning from the dead isn't the kind of thing that happens in Denver. Not outside of movies. But when they checked the records, when they pulled my old file, the disbelief turned into silence. I spent that night sitting in Harrison's office, wrapped in a blanket someone found in the lobby, sipping hot coffee that burned my throat. He asked gentle questions, the kind you can't answer without reopening wounds. How long had I been locked away? Did anyone else know? What happened to my father? I told him what I could, leaving out the parts that still made my hands shake. A detective arrived near sunrise. Her name was Marla Green. She wore a navy jacket and carried herself like someone who'd seen too much. She looked at me, not with pity but with calculation, as if trying to solve an equation that didn't make sense. So, you're saying your stepmother, Victoria Hale, held you captive for how many years? 14? I said quietly. Her eyebrows lifted. And she made everyone think you were dead, yes, Harrison added. His mother, Eleanor Blake, set up a $50 million trust for her children. Victoria became the trustee after Jonathan's death. If Aaron was declared dead, she'd have full control. Detective Green flipped open a notepad. Convenient. She turned back to me. We're going to need to verify your identity. DNA. Fingerprints. The works. I nodded. Whatever you need. The tests didn't take long. Within 24 hours, the results came back. I was who I said I was. The boy presumed dead since 2010 was alive. The story hit the local news before I even left the police station. Reporters camped outside the building, shouting questions I didn't want to answer. How did you survive? Why didn't you escape sooner? What's next for you? What was next I didn't know. They took me to a safe house the first week. The FBI got involved once they traced wire transfers from the Moore Foundation to offshore accounts. It turned out the charity was a front, a way to funnel millions out of the trust over the years. Every new discovery made my stomach twist tighter. It wasn't just what she'd done to me. It was how long she'd gotten away with it. How many dinner parties she'd smiled through while I was counting the drips from a leaking pipe in that basement. On the 5th day, Detective Green showed up with a manila folder. She placed it on the table and looked at me carefully. You should see this before it hits the papers. Inside were photos. Me. Lily. My parents. Then newer ones, Victoria at fundraisers. Shaking hands with politicians. Giving interviews. In one of them, a woman stood beside her. Tall. Elegant. Familiar. I pointed at the photo. Who's that? That, Green said, is your sister. Lily? My breath caught. She looked older, sharper. Her smile was perfect. But her eyes, they were hollow. She's been working as a journalist in New York. She covered a few stories on her stepmother's foundation over the years. Seems she didn't know it was all fake. I traced the photo with my thumb. Does she know I'm alive? Not yet. Green said. We wanted to confirm everything first. I didn't know what to feel. Relief. Anger. Fear they all tangled together until I couldn't tell one from the other. Later that evening, Harrison came by. He carried a leather briefcase and a tired smile. "The trust is still active," he said. "Technically, you and Lily are equal beneficiaries. If she acknowledges your return, Victoria loses everything. She'll fight." I said, "Oh. She'll do more than that," he replied. "She'll run. She'll lie. She'll twist the truth until you doubt your own name again. But this time, you're not a kid in a basement. You have people who believe you." That hit harder than I expected. I'd spent so long being the only voice in a silent room that the idea of anyone believing me felt foreign. 2 days later, Detective Green brought me to an FBI field office downtown. They wanted a full statement. The room smelled like coffee and copy toner. A microphone sat in the center of the table. I told them everything. How she'd forged medical reports, paid a corrupt doctor, and staged my death with fake paperwork. How she'd told the world I'd attacked my own sister. How she'd whispered, "You died, Aaron. You just don't know it yet." When I finished, the room was quiet. An agent leaned forward and said, "We'll need to corroborate the financial side. You sure you're ready for what comes next?" I wasn't. But I nodded anyway. That night, alone in the safe house, I turned on the small TV in the corner. Every channel had my face. Missing heir found alive. Stepmother under investigation. Blake family scandal. Then, on one channel, they played footage of Victoria outside her mansion, surrounded by reporters. She was still immaculate, dressed in white, her hair perfect. "I loved that boy like my own," she said into the microphones. "He's obviously disturbed. I pray he gets the help he needs." I slammed the TV remote onto the table. "The battery's flying out. Help he needs." I could almost hear her voice again, soft and poisonous, telling me I was dangerous, unstable, unworthy of sunlight. I stood there, breathing hard, fists clenched. Then I saw something new scroll across the bottom of the screen. Sources confirm. Victoria Hale transferred assets overseas earlier this week. Authorities suspect flight risk. She was planning to run. Before dawn, I called Harrison. "If she disappears, we lose everything." "She won't," he said. "Not if we find Lily first." "Lily," he paused. "You should be the one to tell her. She deserves to hear it from you." I didn't answer right away. My throat felt tight. She thinks I'm dead. Then it's time she learned otherwise. I hung up and stared out the window. The street outside was still. The city half asleep. Somewhere out there, my sister was living a life built on lies my stepmother had written for us. I had survived the basement. But now came the part I wasn't prepared for, stepping into the light and proving to the world that I'd been alive all along. And to do that, I'd have to face Lily. New York smelled like rain and exhaust. The same way it had when I was a kid visiting with my mom. Only this time I wasn't a tourist. And I wasn't welcome anywhere. Harrison had arranged my flight under a false name, just in case Victoria had people watching. He said it was safer that way. Safer. I used to think safety meant locked doors and silence. Now it meant pretending to be someone who didn't exist. The first time I saw Lily again, she was crossing Lexington Avenue with a cup of coffee in one hand and her phone in the other, talking fast. Her face set in that determined way I remembered from childhood. She worked for the Herald, a big paper with its name carved into the marble lobby like it meant something holy. I waited across the street, hidden behind a newspaper stand, my heart pounding hard enough to hurt. She didn't recognize me when I stepped out to meet her. How could she? The last time she'd seen me, I was 11. Now I was 34. With lines under my eyes and a scar running through my eyebrow where the basement door once split my skin. "Lily," I said softly. She stopped mid-stride. The crowd moved around her, impatient horns blaring. But she didn't move. Her eyes scanned me, confused. "I'm sorry. Do I know you?" "It's me," I said. "Aaron." Her face went blank, then pale. She laughed once, sharp and short, the way people do when they think they've heard a cruel joke. "That's not funny." I shook my head. "I know how it sounds, but I'm real." For a second, she looked like she might faint. Her coffee hit the pavement, spilling dark across the sidewalk. "No," she whispered. "You died. I saw the pictures. The funeral." She made it up. I said quickly. "Victoria forged everything. She kept me locked away all these years." Her lips trembled. "That's impossible." "Then look at me," I said, stepping closer. "Do I look like a ghost?" She didn't answer, just stared at me, tears pooling in her eyes. Her hands shaking so hard the phone nearly slipped from her grip. I caught it before it hit the ground and handed it back. That was what finally broke her. She started crying. The kind of cry that comes from too many years of believing the wrong things. People walked around us, annoyed, curious. But I didn't care, after all the time I'd spent trapped underground. The sound of my sister's voice was enough to drown out the whole city. We found a quiet cafe a few blocks away. She sat across from me, silent, her fingers wrapped around her cup like it might anchor her. "I read about you," she said finally. "In the news. I thought it was a mistake. Another scam. But seeing you, it's real," I said. She nodded slowly, still dazed. "You were gone for 23 years. Aaron. I mourned you. I built my life around that loss. And now you're sitting here telling me it was all a lie. I wish it wasn't. The silence that followed wasn't comfortable. But it was necessary." She broke it first. "Why now? Why come to me because she's running?" I said. "Victoria's moving money out of the foundation. The FBI thinks she's planning to disappear. If we don't act fast, she gets away again." Lily leaned back, wiping her eyes. "You think I can help you? You're a journalist. You've been writing about her foundation for years. You've got access to everything she's been hiding behind." She stared down at her cup, her jaw tightening. "You know what's crazy? I used to admire her. Thought she was strong for keeping the charity alive after Mom died. She used to call me every few months. Check in. Said she missed you." I clenched my fists under the table. She missed controlling us. We sat in silence again. Then she said, "All right. Tell me everything." So I did. I told her about the basement, about the letter from Mom, about how Victoria told me I was dead. Her face changed with every detail: shock, anger, disbelief, grief. When I finished, she whispered, "That woman deserves hell. She'll get prison." I said, "Hell's too kind." Lily rubbed her temples. "I have something you might want to see. A month ago, I got a tip about her moving money through shell charities. I didn't publish because I couldn't verify it. But if you're telling the truth, I am." She reached into her purse and pulled out a flash drive. "This has copies of her tax filings, bank transfers, names of offshore accounts. Someone inside her organization leaked it to me. I was going to turn it over to my editor. But now it's evidence." I took the drive, feeling the weight of it in my palm. This could bring her down. Lily looked at me carefully. "Aaron, if we do this, there's no going back. She's powerful. She has friends in high places. I spent 14 years in a concrete box." I said, "I'm not afraid of her anymore." She stared at me for a long moment, then nodded. "Then we do it together." For the first time in years, I felt something like family again. Not just blood, but purpose. We spent the next 3 days hidden in her apartment, going through files, cross-checking names. Harrison helped remotely, building a case strong enough to make the feds move fast. I slept on her couch. Though sleep was never deep, every sound from the hallway made my heart race. On the 4th morning, Lily was pacing the living room when my phone buzzed. It was Detective Green. "They found her," she said. "Where, Miami?" "She's boarding a private jet right now." My pulse spiked. "You're stopping her, we're trying. But the paperwork's messy. We need confirmation from both heirs before we freeze the accounts. That means you and your sister have to sign today." I looked at Lily. "They need us in Denver." She nodded, already grabbing her coat. "Can we make it in time?" I asked. Green hesitated. "If she takes off, she's gone. You have 6 hours. Maybe less. 6 hours. After all the years she'd stolen from us. 6 hours was all we had to stop her." Lily hung up her coat and looked at me. "Then let's go bring her down." We packed nothing but the flash drive and a folder of copies. Outside, The city roared around us. Cabs blaring. Sirens wailing. For the first time in my life, I wasn't running from something. I was running toward it. And if Victoria Hale wanted to escape, she was going to have to do it from behind bars. The flight back to Denver was quiet except for the sound of the engines and Lily's pen scratching across a notepad. She was making lists, names, dates, transfer numbers, her reporter's brain in overdrive. I just stared out the window, watching the clouds slide by like ghosts that refused to settle. We hadn't spoken much since leaving New York. Every few minutes, I'd catch her looking at me like she still wasn't sure I was real. Sometimes, I wasn't sure either. When we landed, Detective Green was waiting by the gate, flanked by 2 agents in dark suits. She didn't waste time. We've got her location confirmed. She's at a private terminal near Centennial Airport. Planes fueled and waiting. Do you have a warrant? Lily asked. Judge signed off an hour ago, Green said, handing her a folder. We just need both of you to sign these forms to freeze her assets and assert rightful control of the Moore Foundation Trust. Lily looked at me, eyes steady. Let's finish this. We signed in the back of the car as it sped down the freeway. My hands trembled just enough for the pen to slip once. The agent beside me didn't say anything, just turned his gaze to the road. When we reached the terminal, everything looked deceptively calm. The sun was low, washing the tarmac in gold. A white Gulfstream jet sat on the runway, its engines humming. Victoria Hale was standing at the foot of the stairs in a cream suit, her hair pulled back, sunglasses covering half her face. Even from a distance, I recognized the way she stood, shoulders straight, chin high, like she owned the ground beneath her. Green nodded to her team. Wait for my signal. As we got closer, Victoria spotted us. For a moment, she didn't move. Then she smiled. That same cold, polished smile she'd used when she told me I was lucky she hadn't sent me to an asylum. Aaron, she said smoothly as we approached. I was hoping we'd get a chance to talk. I stopped a few feet away. You're not leaving. She laughed softly. Oh, darling. I'm not running. I'm relocating. There's a difference. Lily stepped forward. You forged our parents' deaths. You stole from Mom's foundation. You buried my brother alive. Victoria tilted her head, her expression shifting just slightly. Is that what he told you, Lily? You of all people should know how unstable he is. He's been in and out of institutions for years. It's tragic. Really. Enough, Green said, holding up her badge. Victoria Hale. You're under arrest for fraud, kidnapping, and attempted murder. 2 agents moved in. Victoria didn't resist. She just turned to me, her eyes sharp behind the glasses. You think this makes you free? She said quietly. You'll never be free from me. You are what I made you. I stared back at her. No. I'm what survived you. The agents led her away, reading her rights as the jet engines whined in the background. Lily exhaled shakily, her hands covering her face. I thought I'd feel something, she said. Relief. Maybe. But it just feels empty. I knew what she meant. Justice doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with paperwork, flashbulbs, and a long, hollow quiet after the noise fades. Green turned to us. We'll need both of you at headquarters to finalize statements. After that, the foundation will be secured. You did good. Both of you. Good. I repeated, almost to myself. I wasn't sure what that word meant anymore. Hours later, after the formalities and signatures, Lily and I stood outside the federal building. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. But Green's team kept them back. Lily looked at me. You're staying here. Right, Denver. For now? I said. There's a lot to fix. She nodded, hesitating. I booked a hotel for us tonight. Separate rooms. You could probably use a real bed. A real bed. I hadn't had one in years. That night, I lay staring at the ceiling. The hum of the air conditioner, strangely comforting. For the first time, no locks clicked shut above me. No footsteps paced the floor. Just quiet. I should have felt peace. Instead, I felt restless. Sleep came in fragments. I dreamed of the basement again. The dripping pipe. the sound of my own breathing in the dark. Except this time. When I looked up, the ceiling wasn't there, just open sky. I woke before dawn, heart racing, sweat cold on my neck. Through the hotel window, the first light touched the mountains, turning the horizon silver. There was a knock at the door. When I opened it, Lily was standing there, still, in her robe, holding her phone. Her face was pale. "What is it?" I asked. She turned the screen toward me. A news alert glowed across it in bold red letters: Victoria Hale hospitalized after attempted suicide in federal custody. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Lily whispered, "She's trying to end it before the trial." I stared at the screen. I should have felt satisfaction, maybe even relief. But what I felt was something else, something cold and unfinished. "She doesn't get to write the ending," I said finally. Lily looked at me. "Then who does?" I met her eyes. "We do." The morning light caught her face, softening the exhaustion there. She nodded once. "Then let's make sure the world knows the truth." Outside, the city was waking up. Sirens wailed in the distance. The sound of another day beginning. I stood by the window, watching the light climb over Denver, and realized that freedom wasn't about escape. It was about owning the story that was once stolen from you. And this time, no one was taking it back. The trial started 3 months later, and by then, every headline in the country had my name in it. Some called me the buried heir. Others, the boy who came back. Reporters parked outside my apartment every morning, hungry for new sound bites. I didn't talk to them. I didn't owe anyone my pain. The prosecutors wanted me to testify first. They said juries needed a face, a survivor they could feel something for. I didn't want sympathy, but I wanted justice. So I agreed. The courthouse smelled like disinfectant and old paper. A place built to hold other people's stories. Victoria sat at the defense table in a gray suit, hair pulled back tight, her wrists cuffed in front of her. She looked smaller than I remembered, but her eyes hadn't changed. They still had that same shine, half arrogance, half calculation. When they asked me to take the stand, the world slowed down. I walked past her without looking, sat down, and placed my hands on the rail in front of me. The wood was warm under the lights. The prosecutor, a woman named Carla Dunn, started softly. "Mr. Blake, can you tell the court what happened after your father's death?" I nodded. My voice felt far away when I spoke. "My stepmother, Victoria Hale, told me I was sick. She said I was dangerous, that I needed treatment. She kept me in the basement for 14 years. There was a murmur in the courtroom. I could feel her eyes on me. "Did you ever see a doctor?" Dunn asked. "No. She faked reports from one Dr. Martin Brenner. He was later arrested for forgery and fraud." Dunn nodded. "And during those 14 years, what did you believe?" I swallowed hard. "That I was dead to the world. That my sister thought I was a monster. That my mother's money was paying for my care." I looked at Victoria then. She didn't flinch. She just sat still, her lips pressed in a faint smirk. The prosecutor handed me a photo. My childhood face, smiling on a summer day. "Is this you?" "Yes." "Is this the same boy declared legally deceased in 2010? "Yes." Dunn turned to the jury. "That declaration was signed by Victoria Hale." The defense objected, but it didn't matter. The truth was already bleeding through the cracks. After my testimony, Lily took the stand. She was calm, professional, and brutal in her precision. She presented documents, emails, bank statements. Every lie Victoria had built unraveled under her voice. When it was Victoria's turn to speak, the room held its breath. She leaned forward, clasping her hands. "I loved that boy," she began, "but he was unstable. You have no idea what I went through trying to protect him. He attacked me more than once. He didn't even remember." Her lawyer placed a trembling hand on her shoulder. As if rehearsed, she continued. "The money, I used it for the foundation, for good, for children like him." The prosecutor let her finish before speaking. "Mrs. Hale, are you aware that $50 million was transferred to offshore accounts in your name?" Victoria's lips parted. "That's a misunderstanding." "Then, perhaps you can explain these wire receipts bearing your signature for the first time." She hesitated. The jury saw it. I saw it. That tiny crack in the mask she'd worn her whole life. By the third week, the evidence was overwhelming. The forged medical records, the bribes, the basement photographs. Even Dr. Brenner testified via video, admitting everything in exchange for a lighter sentence. The verdict came on a Friday afternoon. The judge's voice echoed off the walls. Guilty on all counts. Victoria didn't cry. She just looked at me and smiled one last time. Small and strange. You'll never escape me, she mouthed. They led her away. Chains clinking softly. Outside, the crowd cheered when the doors opened. Cameras flashed like lightning. Lily gripped my hand tightly. It's over, she said, but I wasn't sure it was. Because when you've lived in darkness that long, the light hurts before it heals. The next months passed in a blur of interviews, therapy, and quiet dinners with Lily and Harrison. The trust fund was restored. The foundation restructured under new leadership. Lily wanted to rename it, but I told her to keep our mother's name. Mom built it for good. I said, Victoria doesn't get to erase that. One evening, Harrison invited us to his house overlooking the city. The view stretched from the mountains to the lights downtown. He poured 3 glasses of bourbon and raised his in a quiet toast. To survival, he said. I took a sip. It burned, but in a clean way. Lily smiled faintly. To the truth, I looked out the window. The city glowing below like something alive. 2 endings, I said. And the people who make them possible. Later that night, I walked alone down the empty street outside his house. The air was cool, sharp, honest. For the first time, I didn't feel watched. I stopped under a street lamp and looked up at the stars. They were faint, but they were there, somewhere inside me. A voice whispered that forgiveness might come someday. But not tonight. Tonight was for breathing, for living, and for finally, completely, being free. Freedom was supposed to feel lighter than this. That's what everyone told me. Reporters said things like, a new chapter. Therapists used words like, closure. And strangers on the internet called me brave. But I still woke up every morning before sunrise. Heart pounding. Waiting to hear the sound of her footsteps above me. The trial had ended 3 months ago. Victoria Hale was serving a life sentence in a federal facility in Kansas. The judge denied her parole, citing extreme malice and premeditated cruelty. She was gone. Locked away. A ghost in a system she couldn't manipulate. But somehow, she still lived in the corners of my mind. I'd started teaching part-time at a local law school, guest lecturing on wrongful imprisonment. It was strange. Standing in front of a class full of young faces, talking about justice when I still wasn't sure what it really meant. After class, students would come up to thank me, shake my hand, ask if I ever planned to write a book. I always said maybe. The truth was, I didn't know how to put it into words without falling apart. Lily and I had turned the Moore Foundation into something new. We renamed it the Blake Initiative, focused on finding missing persons who might still be alive. Kids hidden by people who were supposed to love them. We'd already helped rescue 5. Every time I got a call saying another child had been found, part of me felt whole again. Still, the nights were hard. Sometimes, I'd fall asleep and dream I was back in that basement. Only now, when I looked up, the door was open. But I couldn't move. My body refused to climb the stairs. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, gasping like I'd been buried again. Therapy helped. Dr. Jen, a calm. The patient woman who never flinched when I talked about the dark stuff said, the body remembers even when the mind wants to forget. I told her I didn't want to forget. I just wanted it to stop feeling like it could happen again. One afternoon after a session, I was walking to my car when my phone buzzed. An unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it. But something made me answer. Mr. Blake, a voice said. Female. Professional. This is Warden Hughes from Fort Laramie Correctional Facility. My pulse spiked instantly. What is it? It's about inmate Victoria Hale. The air around me seemed to thin. What about her? The warden hesitated. She passed away early this morning. Massive stroke. We're notifying next of kin. You were listed as her legal contact. For a moment, all I heard was wind. Cars passed. Doors slammed in the distance. But everything felt far away. I'm not her family. I managed to say, I understand. Seer. But there are personal effects in her cell. A box addressed to you. Would you like it forwarded? My first instinct was to say no. To burn it before it even arrived. But the part of me that had lived too long in her shadow needed to know. Send it. I said. The box came 3 days later. Sealed with the same neat handwriting she used on every fake medical report she ever showed me. Inside were a few things, an old photograph of her and my father, a silver necklace I hadn't seen since childhood, and a small envelope. My name was written on the front. I sat on the floor and stared at it for a long time before opening it. Inside was a single page. Aaron, you won. I suppose that should make me proud. But it doesn't. You think you understand what happened. But you never saw the whole picture. There were things your father never told you. Things your mother kept hidden. She wasn't the saint you remember. She made promises she couldn't keep to him. To me. To you. The money wasn't hers to give. It was borrowed power. And I only took it back. You'll find the rest in the safety deposit box at Crescent Bank. Under my maiden name. You deserve to know who you really are. Victoria, I read it 3 times before setting it down. My hands were shaking. Not from fear. But from rage. She was still playing games. Even from the grave. Lily came over that night. When I showed her the letter, she frowned. She's manipulating you again. She wants to drag you back into her world. Maybe. I said. But what if there's truth in it? She lied about everything. Don't give her one more chance. I folded the letter carefully. If there's nothing in that box, then we'll know for sure. The next morning, we went to Crescent Bank. The clerk recognized the court order Harrison had drafted for us. But even she looked uneasy when she opened the vault. Inside the deposit box was a single flash drive and a handwritten ledger. Yellowed with age. The ledger was filled with numbers, dates, bank codes, transfers from accounts that predated even my father's first company. Some of them went back 30 years. What the hell is this? Lily whispered. Harrison studied it later that night. If this is real, your parents weren't just running a trust. They were moving money through offshore accounts connected to something called Helix Holdings. That name's been flagged before political donations. Corporate laundering. Some kind of network that disappeared after 2008. So she was right, I asked. He sighed. Partly. Maybe she wasn't stealing from your mother. Maybe she was cleaning up after her. Lily slammed her hand on the table. No. Don't do that. Don't start giving that woman credit. Harrison raised a calming hand. It doesn't excuse what she did. Nothing does. But this, it's bigger than her. If we expose it, you're not just clearing your name anymore. You're taking down a whole system. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the flash drive. For years, I'd thought my story ended when I walked out of that basement. Now I realized it had only changed shape. Victoria Hale might have been the monster who raised me. But she wasn't the only one hiding something in the dark. And if she was right about what lay behind that drive, then the past wasn't finished with me yet. The flash drive sat on my desk for 2 days before I finally opened it. I didn't tell Lily. I didn't tell Harrison. I just waited until midnight when the city outside had gone quiet and plugged it into my laptop. There were 3 folders. One labeled Helix. Another Eleanor. And a third called Truth. My hands were slick with sweat as I clicked the first one. Inside were hundreds of documents, old bank transfers, shell company registrations, memos between law firms and offshore trusts. They all tied back to names I didn't recognize, industrial contractors, lobbyists, even a senator from California. It wasn't just money. It was power. The second folder, Eleanor, was worse. There were letters between my mother and someone named Richard M. Alcott emails, scanned contracts, and a single line in one message that hit me like a punch. If anything happens to Jonathan, we proceed with phase 2 immediately. The children must be protected. The children. That was me and Lily. I clicked through every file, trying to piece together what it meant. The last message from my mother was dated 2 weeks before she died. It was addressed to Victoria. Victoria, you were right about him. If something happens, keep them safe. Use the trust if you must. But don't let them near Alcott. Promise me. I sat there staring at the screen, my heart hammering. Victoria hadn't lied, not entirely. She'd twisted the truth into something monstrous. But at the core of it, there was something real. The last folder, Truth, contained a single video file. I clicked it. The screen flickered. And then my mother appeared. She was sitting at her desk. The same one that had been in her office when I was a kid. Her hair was tied back. Her expression tired but steady. If you're watching this, she began. Then I'm gone. And that means I failed to stop what's coming. I froze. The video looked old, recorded maybe a few days before the crash. There are things about our family you don't know. Aaron, your father's company wasn't just building energy plants. It was part of something bigger. Something dangerous. I tried to pull us out. But he wouldn't listen. When I realized how deep it went, I created the trust in your name, not as a gift, but as protection. Money moves quietly in America. It hides sins. She hesitated, eyes glancing off camera. Victoria knows enough to survive. I trusted her once. I'm not sure if I still do. But if you're alive when you see this, find Richard Alcott. He's the key. He'll tell you why we had to disappear. The video ended. I sat back, breath shaking. The room felt smaller somehow. The walls closer. My mother hadn't died in some random car crash. She'd been running from something. Maybe that crash wasn't even an accident. The next morning, I called Harrison and Lily to meet me at the foundation office. When they arrived, I played the video. Lily's face went pale. She was protecting us. She whispered. All this time. She was trying to save us. Harrison leaned against the table, brow furrowed. Richard Alcott. He repeated. That name rings a bell. He's a lobbyist. Used to work for the Department of Energy before he disappeared in 2011. The feds couldn't trace him. Rumor was he turned whistleblower. Can you find him? I asked. I can try, he said. But if he's still alive, he won't want to be found. Lily crossed her arms. Aaron, maybe we shouldn't chase this. We already got justice. Maybe it's time to let it end. I shook my head. It doesn't end with her. It started before her. If Mom was right, this goes higher than any of us. She looked at me for a long moment. You sound just like her. That night, I couldn't sleep. The glow of the laptop burned through the dark as I read more of the Helix files. Every path led back to the same company, Helix Energy Systems, a subsidiary quietly dissolved in 2010, right after my parents' deaths. The final transfer in the ledger showed a $5 million wire to an account belonging to R. M. Alcott. I stared at the numbers until my eyes blurred. Victoria's voice echoed in my head from her letter. You'll find the rest in the safety deposit box. You deserve to know who you really are. Who I really was. The next morning, I drove to the only address that matched Alcott's name, an abandoned property near Boulder. Listed under a trust company. The house was boarded up. Grass overgrown. Windows shattered. I pushed the gate open and stepped inside. Dust hung in the air. There was a faint smell of mildew and burnt paper. The place had been emptied long ago. But someone had lived there recently. On the kitchen counter sat a mug half full of cold coffee. And next to it, a photo in a cracked frame. My mother and Richard Alcott, standing together, smiling. I didn't hear the footsteps until it was too late. Didn't think anyone would actually come looking. A voice said behind me. I turned. The man was older now, gray hair, sunburned skin, eyes sharp as glass. Richard Alcott, I asked. He stared at me for a moment, then gave a short laugh. You look just like her. My pulse quickened. You knew my mother. Knew her, he said. Kid. Your mother and I started Helix. I froze. What do you mean started? He sighed, lowering himself into a chair that creaked under his weight. It was supposed to be clean energy, government-funded, good PR, big dreams. But your father turned it into something else: military contracts, weapons research. When your mother found out, she tried to pull the plug. He didn't let her. That's when she came to me. So what happened? She planned to expose them. Alcott said. She gathered files, names, evidence. But before she could go public, that car crash happened. After that, Victoria showed up with a settlement agreement and 50 million reasons to stay quiet. I went underground. My throat tightened. You think my father had her killed? Alcott shook his head. No. But the people funding him might have. Silence filled the house. Finally, he looked at me. If you've got that flash drive, then you've got the proof. Enough to open every door they've been trying to keep shut for 15 years. But be careful. The people who built Helix, they're still out there. He stood, walking toward the door. And now they know you are too. I watched him disappear into the sunlight, the words echoing in my head. They know you are too. I looked back at the empty room, at the dust swirling through the light, and realized something cold and certain. Victoria Hale had built my prison, but the people behind Helix built hers. And whatever they'd started back then, it wasn't over. I didn't go home that night. I drove until the sun came up, the flash drive burning a hole in my pocket like a secret I wasn't ready to keep or share. The highway outside Boulder was empty, except for a few trucks, and the sound of wind cutting through the mountains. Every mile felt like a heartbeat counting down to something inevitable. When I finally pulled into Denver, I parked near the lake and sat in silence. My reflection stared back at me from the windshield, older, harder. Someone who'd lived too many lives in one. I thought about my mother's voice in that video. Calm but afraid. About Victoria's letter. About the men who'd funded Helix, and the accidents that weren't accidents. And then about Lily. When I called her, she answered on the first ring. Where the hell have you been? Harrison's been worried sick. I found Alcott, I said quietly. The line went dead for a second. You what? He's alive. He told me everything. Helix wasn't just a company. It was a cover for something darker. Mom was going to expose it before the crash. She exhaled sharply. Aaron, listen to yourself. You're digging into things that destroyed our family. Why can't you let it go because Mom didn't die for nothing? I said. Someone made sure she never spoke. And now I know who funded them. Then call the FBI. She said. Let them deal with it. I can't. I said. They're in it too. That was the moment I realized how deep this thing went. When I got back to the foundation later that morning, the front doors were unlocked even though we'd closed for the weekend. I froze. Listening. A faint hum came from upstairs. Someone had turned on a computer. I climbed the stairs quietly. In the conference room, Lily was standing with a man in a gray suit. Someone I didn't recognize. A small hard drive sat on the table between them. She turned when she saw me. Aaron, who is he? I asked. The man extended a hand. Mr. Blake. I'm Agent Wallace. Department of Justice. Your sister reached out to us this morning. Lily swallowed. They can protect us. From whoever's left. I glanced at the drive. You gave them the files. She hesitated. We can't handle this alone. It's too big. I stepped closer. You had no right. Her voice cracked. I had every right. I lost my childhood too. Aaron. I'm not watching you burn what's left of our lives, trying to fight ghosts. Agent Wallace raised a hand. Mr. Blake. I understand your frustration. But those documents contain federal security data. Possessing them could expose you to criminal charges. I laughed once. Hollow. So now I'm the criminal again. That's convenient. He kept his tone even. You did the right thing, coming forward. We'll take it from here. Lily's eyes pleaded with me to stand down, but something in me refused. I'd spent too many years letting others decide what I was allowed to know. Allowed to feel. Allowed to believe. Fine. I said finally. Take it. But if you bury this, if you make it disappear like they did with my parents, I'll make sure the whole world sees it. Wallace nodded slowly. Fair enough. He collected the drive, gave Lily a card, and left. When the door shut, the silence between us was heavier than anything Victoria had ever built. You don't trust them, Lily said softly. I don't trust anyone who works behind locked doors. I said. She crossed her arms. You sound paranoid. I met her eyes. You sound safe. That's what they want. She looked away. You're not the only one who lost everything. I know. I said quietly. But I'm the only one who remembers what it's like to be buried alive. I left before she could answer. That night, I drove to the lake again. The city lights shimmered on the water. And for a long time, I just stood there listening to the wind. I thought about my mother's words, "Don't let them near Alcott." She'd been trying to protect us, not just from Victoria, but from something much larger. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You shouldn't have talked to him." No name. No context. Just that. I turned in a slow circle, scanning the empty lot. Nothing but the reflection of streetlights and the sound of water lapping against the rocks. When I looked back at my phone, another message appeared. "They're not done with you, Aaron." I stared at it until the screen dimmed. Maybe Victoria had been right about one thing. The monsters weren't always the ones who kept you locked away. Sometimes they were the ones who opened the door just to see what you'd do next. I dropped the phone into the lake, watched it sink, and walked back to the car. For the first time in years, I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't stop now, because the truth wasn't finished with me yet, and neither were they.